Hey, welcome. I'm really glad you're here tonight. Seriously, thank you for spending a little bit of your evening with me. I've been looking forward to this. You know, there's something I've come to appreciate about this time of night. When most of the noise finally starts dying down and everything gets a little quieter, a little softer. It feels like one of the only parts of the day where you can actually breathe for a second. And honestly, I need that too. My days can get busy, loud, a little chaotic sometimes. And by the time night rolls around, there's always this part of me that's just grateful to finally slow down, to sit still for a minute, to let the pace of the day stop chasing me. So wherever you are tonight, whether you're in bed, driving home late, out on a walk, or just sitting somewhere with your thoughts, I'm happy you're here. And I hope this can be a place where, for a little while, we both get to slow down together. No pressure, no performance, no trying to have everything figured out. Just a little space to breathe, to think, to unwind, and maybe leave the night feeling a little lighter than when we started. Because if you're anything like most people, you've probably cared a lot today. Maybe more than anyone realizes. And whether it was work, responsibility, family, stress, or just the weight of trying to hold your life together, you deserve a moment to set some of that down. So, get comfortable. Settle in. Let the pace of the day start to fall off your shoulders if it wants to. And if your mind's still moving 100 miles an hour, that's alright. We'll get there. No rush. Because tonight, I want to talk a little bit about that feeling. That pressure we put on ourselves to keep thinking, to keep solving, keep carrying everything long after the day is over. That sense that if we stop worrying about it, even for a second, something might fall apart. But before we get into all of that, I want you to take a second and just settle in with me. Take a breath with me for a second. Nothing forced, nothing dramatic. Just let yourself arrive here. Let your shoulders soften a little. Let your jaw unclench if it needs to. If your body's still carrying some of the day with it, see if you can loosen your grip on it for a minute. You don't have to hold yourself so tightly right now. And if your mind is still racing, that's okay. No need to force it quiet. No need to pretend you're more settled than you are. Just let yourself be here as you are. Because honestly, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. How hard it can be to finally lay down at the end of the day and realize your body is tired, but your mind still hasn't stopped moving. how the world gets quiet and somehow your thoughts get louder. How nighttime has a way of making everything unresolved feel just a little heavier. And if you know that feeling, if the quiet of the night sometimes turns into overthinking, you're not alone in that. A lot of us know that feeling. And I think for a lot of us, there's a reason we do that. And I think sometimes beneath all that overthinking, there's pressure there. At least, I know for me there's been that quiet pressure to keep everything together, to stay ahead, to not miss anything important, to make the right decisions, to somehow manage life well enough that nothing slips through your hands. And I think that's part of why rest can feel more complicated than it should. Because part of you knows you're tired. Part of you knows you need rest. But then there's that other part. The part that doesn't quite trust what happens when you let go. And I've had nights like that, where physically I'm exhausted, but mentally, some part of me still feels like it has to stay on watch. Because maybe if you stop thinking about it, something gets missed. Maybe if you stop worrying about it, something gets worse. Maybe if you stop running through every possibility, you overlook the one thing that comes back to hurt you later. So even when your body is exhausted, your mind stays on duty, still reviewing, still scanning, still trying to stay one step ahead, still trying to solve things that probably don't need to be solved at midnight. And I've noticed, it's almost like the mind starts believing that as long as it's working, as long as it's thinking, as long as it's analyzing, then at least you're doing something. At least you're trying. At least you're staying on top of it. And maybe that's why doing something can start to feel safer than letting go. Even if the something you're doing is just running the same thoughts in circles. Because underneath all of that, there's usually fear. Fear that if you let go, you'll fall behind. Fear that if you stop paying attention, something important slips through the cracks. Fear that if you relax too much, life somehow punishes you for it. And I know that may sound dramatic when you hear it out loud, but I think for some of us, that really is what it feels like. Like relaxing too much is dangerous. Like getting too comfortable is how things fall apart. So the mind stays engaged. Not because it wants to torture you, but because maybe, in its own strange way, it believes it's helping. Trying to keep you prepared. Trying to keep you safe. Trying to keep you in control of things that feel uncertain. And maybe that's what makes it so exhausting. Because part of you knows the overthinking isn't really helping. And I know I've had moments where I can feel myself doing it. Feel myself going in circles and still struggle to stop. Because stopping can feel vulnerable. Like lowering your guard. Like trusting that not everything has to be solved right now. And maybe part of you doesn't fully believe that yet. Maybe part of you still carries this quiet belief that responsible people stay mentally engaged. Disciplined people stay on top of things. Capable people don't get too comfortable. So when you try to rest, it can almost feel like you're doing something wrong. Like you haven't earned it yet. Like there's still more to think about, more to fix, more to prepare for. And maybe the strangest part is, the more deeply you care about something, the harder it can be to set it down. Because the things your mind clings to most are usually the things that matter most to you. Your future, your relationships, your responsibilities, the people you love, the life you're trying to build. And when something matters that much, the mind grips tighter, analyzes harder, keeps trying to think its way into certainty, until eventually, if you live in that pattern long enough, you can get so used to bracing that relaxing starts to feel unnatural. So used to carrying pressure that setting it down starts to feel irresponsible. And that's a difficult way to live. To be physically tired, but mentally unable to release. To want peace, but struggle to trust it. To desperately need rest, while feeling guilty for taking it. And if that tension lives in you, if rest sometimes feels harder than it should, maybe that's part of why. And the truth is, if that resonates with you, you're not alone in that. You're not unusual for that. You're not the only person who's ever laid in bed exhausted while their mind refused to clock out. A lot of people live that way. A lot of people who seem calm on the outside quietly wrestle with that on the inside. Because uncertainty is difficult for almost everyone. Wanting answers is human. Wanting clarity is human. Wanting life to feel predictable enough to relax inside of it is human. The uncomfortable part is, life really gives us that much certainty. Being human means living with unfinished things, unanswered questions, imperfect information, decisions you can't know for sure were right until after you made them. That's part of the deal. And I think sometimes what makes adulthood difficult is learning to live well inside that uncertainty. Because no one really gets the luxury of full certainty. No one gets to know for sure that every decision will work out. No one gets guarantees. No one gets complete control. And yet, we still spend so much of life wishing we did. Trying to think our way into certainty. Trying to prepare our way into safety. Trying to plan our way out of pain. But life has never worked that way. No one has ever worried enough to eliminate risk. No one has ever thought hard enough to make uncertainty disappear. No one has ever planned so perfectly that disappointment became impossible. Some things in life simply can't be controlled that thoroughly. And some things cannot be solved the moment they appear. Some things take time. Some things take perspective. Some things take distance. And some things only become clear after you stop staring at them so hard. And I think that can be a difficult truth to accept. That more mental effort is not always what a problem needs. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is stop trying to solve it tonight. Not because it doesn't matter. Not because you're giving up. Not because you're being careless. But because not every problem gets better under midnight pressure. Some things get distorted when you stare at them through an exhausted mind. Some things get heavier the longer you turn them over at 1 a.m. Some things need daylight. Some things need sleep. Some things need distance. And maybe part of growing up, or maybe just part of learning how to live well, is figuring out the difference between what truly needs my attention right now and what simply feels urgent because I'm anxious and tired. Because those are not the same thing. And if you treat every anxious thought like an emergency, your life will always feel like an emergency. And that's no way to live. Because eventually, you exhaust yourself trying to carry what was never meant to be carried all at once. Sometimes the most mature thing you can do, the most grounded thing you can do, is admit, this matters, but it does not need to be solved tonight. And I know that can sound simple, almost too simple, but sometimes the simplest truths are the hardest ones to actually live by. Because when something matters to you, when something feels unresolved, when uncertainty is sitting heavy on your chest, it can feel wrong to stop worrying about it. It can feel irresponsible. Like if you put it down for the night, you're neglecting it, avoiding it, failing to take it seriously. But rest is not avoidance. Putting something down for the night is not pretending it doesn't exist. Stepping away from a problem is not abandoning it. Sometimes it's wisdom. Because a tired mind is not always the right tool for the job. Some problems do not become clearer the longer you stare at them through exhaustion. Sometimes all that happens is you drain yourself trying to force clarity from a mind that has nothing left to give. And I think one of the harder lessons to learn in life is that not every problem requires immediate mental engagement. Some things can wait until morning. Some things need daylight. Some things need the version of you that has slept. Because distance changes things. Sleep changes things. Time changes things. Problems that felt impossible at 1 a.m. often look very different at 8 a.m. Not because they disappeared, but because exhaustion was amplifying them. Because fear was distorting them. Because fatigue was making everything feel heavier than it really was. Sometimes clarity doesn't come from more effort. Sometimes it comes from stepping back, from sleeping on it, from letting the emotional charge drain out of the problem before you pick it back up. And maybe that's part of maturity. Learning that urgency and importance are not always the same thing. Something can matter deeply and still not require your attention at midnight. Something can be unresolved and still be safe to leave alone for a few hours. Something can deserve care and effort without deserving your peace tonight. Because if you give every unresolved issue full access to your peace, you will never have peace. There will always be something unfinished, something uncertain, something imperfect. So peace cannot depend on total resolution. It has to coexist with unfinished things. And maybe tonight, the invitation is simply this: to stop demanding that your mind solve everything before you allow yourself to rest. Stop treating every anxious thought like a command. Stop assuming that because something feels urgent, it is urgent. And maybe instead, to trust that some things can wait. Some things benefit from distance. And some things actually become clearer when you stop forcing them. Because if something really matters, it will still matter in the morning. You do not have to keep it alive all night to prove you care. You do not have to suffer over something to show that it matters. Sometimes the most grounding thing you can do is trust that the problem will still be there tomorrow, and that tomorrow you may meet it with clearer eyes, steadier hands, and a calmer mind. So maybe tonight, instead of solving it, you just set it down. Not forever. Not because it's fixed. Not because it no longer matters. Just because you've carried it enough for one day. And because not every issue deserves midnight energy. So if your mind is still holding on to something tonight, still reaching for answers, still trying to work through what isn't ready to be worked through yet, maybe this is just your reminder that it can wait. Not forever, just for tonight. Whatever is unfinished can remain unfinished for a few more hours. Whatever is uncertain can stay uncertain until morning. Whatever still needs your attention will still be there when the sun comes up. And maybe tonight, instead of trying to force closure, you just let the day be over. Let the questions rest. Let the unfinished be unfinished. Let tomorrow hold what belongs to tomorrow. Because you have carried enough for one day. And whether it feels like it or not, you are allowed to rest before everything is resolved. You are allowed to sleep while some things remain uncertain. You are allowed to breathe in the middle of unfinished things. And maybe that's enough for tonight. Maybe tonight, peace doesn't come from figuring it all out. Maybe it comes from finally deciding you don't have to. So if there's something your mind keeps trying to drag you back toward, I hope you let it be for a little while. I hope you trust that it can wait. And more than anything, I hope you let yourself rest. Because whatever it is, whatever still feels unfinished, whatever still feels uncertain, it will still be there in the morning. And tonight, you don't have to solve it. Rest easy tonight. I'll see you after midnight.